Hello and welcome to Podiatry Practice Mastery. My name is Don Pelto and I have Dr. Chris Milkie in for the show again. Thanks, Chris, for joining again.
Oh, my pleasure, Don. Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you, glad with all the technical difficulties that we have here. So as we started before, we're going to start again. And I asked kind of what's interesting. And you said you did a recent kind of training on front end for your practice. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really focused on, the customer experience. Obviously, in our world, it's patient experience. I did a Disney course. It was a couple of days, kind of see behind the scenes. And the person that runs it worked at Disney for 10 years. And I thought it was really fascinating that he worked at Chef Mickey's, which is at the Contemporary, one restaurant with very average food. This place does $78 million in revenue in a year. It's just incredible. And it's all because of the experience. It's not because of the food. It's because they created systems and details and everything that goes into getting people in and out in 45 minutes and having them meet with Mickey and all that good stuff. So just, this whole thing got my wheels spinning about what could we do better as a company with our patient experience, and really getting the staff involved and, having them help out with what kind of touches can they bring to the practice to just elevate that patient experience even more, because we're always thinking about it. We talk about it in every single staff meeting. How can we be better? How can we be different than the podiatrist down the street or the big corporate medicine, which we have a lot of in Milwaukee, down the road as well? So, and our patients are the ones who are going to refer other patients. So, one part of our marketing is patient referral. So we really want to elevate that experience even more. Little touches here and there. It doesn't take a lot, but little moments, as they say, that a patient will remember. It's not always just about the outcome. Obviously, we got to do a good job, right? We have to make sure that we get our patients good outcomes, but moments that patients are going to remember. For instance, I'll give you a funny one. It's kind of witty. My last name is Milkie. I give out Milky Way candy bars so that my patients remember. And I say to them, I thought of a witty way for you not to forget my name. And then I show them the candy bar and they all chuckle and big smile. And, it's one of those things that they're probably not going to forget. And they're going to probably tell at least one other person about that. Right. So, just really thinking about the patient experience.
I like that one that I do when I do ingrown toenails. When I put the bandage on, we use like tape, and I always I do an upside down smiley face on it. It takes 5 seconds, but that's what they talk about. They'll take pictures of it, they'll put it online, they'll post it on social media. So I guess for those that are listening, what are those things that you can kind of give a wow experience? And because, like you said, we're all podiatrists. It's, if we don't do something different, we're going to be commoditized. We're going to be a commodity. And are you 10 times better than the practice next door just because you have 10 times the reviews? No, you're not. But it's perception.
Of course. Yeah. And that's really a key one right there. Like, we can't compete on price because nobody knows our prices. And we can't really compete on product because, for the most part, people don't really know what our products are until they walk in, have pain, and, we might have more widgets than the guy or the practice down the street. We can compete on experience because we can be different than just about anybody, because most practices don't think about that. So those who are watching, really focus on your experience and find those moments like the bandage, as you mentioned, or the Milky Way candy bar, as I mentioned.
Yeah. So let's talk about I know you're probably very similar. We have like bright, shiny objects. So I'll go to a course like this and I'll have like 500 ideas. And then like 3 months from now, I won't implement anything. Do you have any tips for people listening? Like, how do you take 500 ideas, get them down to 2 or 3 and actually implement them so they're not Chris dependent. They're not the doctor dependent. What's working for you, or what tips do you have for people?
Yeah, that's always the $1 million question, right? Like
what problem, Chris?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I've learned over the years is, because there's plenty of times I left a meeting and didn't do anything. But I realized that that's frustrating. I spent the time and the money to do this, and there's great ideas. I like to, I've heard a saying, do less, but obsess. So I like to take one thing, maybe 2, and then just really dial them in. The whole 90-day approach that Dan Sullivan, the great coach of entrepreneurs, has taught us, no more than just one or two things, maybe three at the most in a quarter, right? 90 days,
Yeah.
and really focus on them. But you're right. I think one of the most important things is being able to take the information and give it away. Make sure your team gets involved so that they're doing the work, not you, right? The whole, Dan Sullivan wrote a book recently with Ben Hardy called Who, Not How. We don't need to know the how. We just need to know who in our company can be the person who can take an idea and run with it. Now, when it comes to patient experience, like we talked about, I want to be involved in that because I study that kind of stuff. So I sit down with my team, but I want their ideas. I want their input. I don't just want to say to them, let's give patients a Disney experience. What do they really know what a Disney experience is? Or let's be like Ritz-Carlton. I personally have never stayed at one, and I know my team members have never stayed at one. So we have to think together about what kind of experience we want for patients. And I want it to be their ideas. And the more it's their ideas, the more they're actually going to do something with it.
I think that's great. Now these are ideas, Chris, that are your staff dependent or you dependent. Did they give any ideas like of or let's talk about that restaurant. Are there automated things that can be automatically done that aren't people dependent? Are there other wow factors that they talked about there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's analog. I mean, a lot of it is really with, high touch. And I think that, obviously the world has moved to automation, and yet there's still businesses are high touch. Think of a Chick-fil-A. I mean, think of Disney. I mean, they're not, they have automation. At the same time, it's high touch. I mean, Chick-fil-A now has people out in the lines for drive-through actually interacting with people and giving them an experience while they're waiting, and nice conversation and saying the two magical words, my pleasure, like they're known for. So analog is still, we're still, look, we get calls, people call our office, we're having conversations with them. Yes, you can do some scheduling with some systems online, but yet, can you really build rapport with anybody? Are they going to really be connected to your business? Is there engagement on a personal level with them? We have the opportunity in our businesses to do that. We're not working remotely. We're in the trenches with people, with humans. And I still think, and I don't believe it's just because I'm almost 60 that I'm thinking about kind of old school concepts. High touch is always going to be important in the medical world. And we can differentiate ourselves by just being better at giving the right touches.
That's great, Chris. Tell me a little bit about you as a doctor and your staff, how you guys develop rapport with patients. Do you have any tips like using their name or touching their feet or asking open-ended questions? What works for you to really, you can tell when you connect with certain patients, and what works for you, and how do you train the other doctors that you train?
Sure. Simple things like they did a study and found that like the most important thing when it comes to customer service is a smile. Something so simple, right? And yet, how many grouchy receptionists have we heard about over the years?
Yeah.
They walk into an office and they don't have a smile on their face. I mean, I walk into businesses all the time and there's not a smile. They're not greeting me, so a formal greeting, welcome to our office. It's one of the things that we're kind of known for, is when somebody calls and they're a new patient, welcome to our office. How did you hear about us? It just kind of rolls off the tongue most of the time. I'd like to say 100% of the time, but most of the time when they walk in, I'm Mrs. Johnson, whatever, welcome to our office. When the medical assistant calls the patient back to the treatment room, hi, Mrs. Johnson, my name is Michelle, welcome to our office. Again, welcome again. I'll say it maybe 50% of the time when I walk in, welcome to our practice. Thank you for choosing us. And then the rapport building of, asking them maybe something personal. I look on the intake form and see that they have a particular hobby of gardening or golfing or reading or whatever, and, try to bring that up. Just make some sort of personal connection with someone who might come in from kind of what we call a cold lead, like a Google lead or something like that, where there's no personal connection there. We want to do whatever we can to, make that personal connection with, just talking about something in their world, or, make a little bit of a joke or something witty about, a particular foot problem or something like that. Obviously not joking about their feet, but you know what I mean? It's just, really we call it engagement in our business. We want to engage at a very high level with patients so that they feel like First of all, it kind of breaks down the walls a little bit, makes them feel more comfortable. Because what we take for granted is that people know what they have. Guess what? People are walking in thinking they have cancer in a lot of cases when they might have plantar fasciitis, or they might have a ganglion cyst or something like that. So we want to make them feel comfortable. Engagement is really, really important to us. And it's one of the things that we put up high on our values.
Yeah. Now, do you guys evaluate for that? Do you ever do surveys in the practice? We don't tend to do surveys to see how people are engaged or if they're liking you or things like that. How do you try any of that stuff, or you tell people to do that?
We used to do that. We used to have an automated way to do that. We just got away from it because the number of people that engage with that wasn't very high.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's just more intuitive, I guess, and just anecdotal, and we get good reviews. And, people come back, which is a big one. I mean, a lot of times practices don't know how many people are coming back. So we actually, we have a metric that we use. It's, I call it the new patient multiplier index. Just came up with the name. And essentially it is looking at what percentage of your new patients come back or don't come back. And strikingly, shockingly, about 30 to 40% of new patients in most podiatry practices, when they first look at this number, don't come back for a second appointment. So we really looked at this is back several years ago. I did a 90-day study of how many of our new patients didn't come back ever for a second appointment. And it was 33%. And I was shocked. And then we really worked at just different, patient experience things in our practice engagements, everything, scheduling, confirmations, all those things. We're able to get it down to about 12%. There's always going to be some that don't need to come back because they got better, what have you. Price sometimes can be a factor for people. But at the same time, there is a percentage in there that we were missing because we were not controlling things. We didn't have the right systems in place to do that. So that's a metric right there. I think that can tell you a lot. When a lot of them are coming back, then you're doing something right.
That's great, Chris. I was recently listening to someone else's podcast, and they were talking about like getting rid of PRN visits. And I thought to myself, well, and this is just, for me, the easiest thing was someone comes in for nail fungus, I take a nail sample and I just do everything else follow up. Whereas they're really happy to come back and review the results in 3 weeks with me. And it's something really simple. It's just adding another follow up. And it took me a while to learn that. And for other things, I always think, well, new patients, they never have a problem coming back if you can give them value, right? The key is what you can do, either review results or have a reason for them to come back and tell them. Otherwise, they'll cancel. They'll be like, oh, what's the reason? But that's key. If people listening just can take that one thing away, is have all new patients come back.
Right. And it's not just a matter of having them come back. I mean, obviously you have to have the systems to come back. But I always, Dan Kennedy always said, one of the, key things you can do in your business is find the truth of what's going back. And it's a metric that anybody can look at in their business. Look at your new patients and then look at how many of them haven't come back for a second appointment. So you just, go into your practice management system, and, most individual doctor practices might have between 50 and 100 new patients in a month. So you don't have to look at thousands. I was looking at 500, 600 new patients, and really, you have a report. So I didn't have to go through one individually. Look at the report and then look at how many of them didn't come back for a second visit. And again, 33%. And the thing is, a lot of doctors will say, all my patients come back. And I've had many doctors say that, and then they dive into their metrics and find out the truth. And the truth has always been over 30% the first time it's studied. And then now you know the truth, and now you can go to work on the things that you need to do to try to bring as many of them back as possible.
That's it. That's the takeaway today. That's great, Chris. Cool. Thank you for that. That's a gem for everyone listening here. Now, if you're like Chris or I, you're probably going to listen to that, and you're probably going to say that's a good idea, and you're probably going to get busy seeing patients here in about 20 minutes. So the key is to write it down, to try to do 3 things a week. That's all I try to do. 3 things a week, put it as one of your things, try it. You'll probably mess up the first couple of times. You don't know how to make the report, things like that, right, Chris? Any change is hard, but if you just do that one thing, you're going to find improvement. And that's the key. These aren't huge sweeping things that Chris works with people on. It's the little things, but doing them, right? That's what.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I call it hidden money. These are people that are walking into your practice what can we do to keep them there, right? I mean, there's been studies that indicate that, your profitability can go up between 25 and almost 100% if you can keep people in the doors, right?
Yeah.
Dan Kennedy talks about the fence around the herd,
Yep.
affectionately our herd of patients. Like, we don't want them to come in the front door and go out the back door. We want to close the back door and keep them in when they need to be, right? I mean, obviously with integrity, and if, they don't need to come back, they don't need to come back. But at the same time, many of them do, and we want them there. And, pay, stay, and refer. Those are the three things we're focusing on.
That's awesome, Chris. Well, I think we covered some great things. Tell me a little bit more what you're doing. I think you referenced to kind of a little merger going on. And so if people want to learn more about you and what you do, how can they learn that?
Right. Yeah. So I've been, Podiatry Success Today, my coaching consulting business has been, around for about 5 years. I've also worked with Fabi. Lowell Weil started Fabi about 8 years ago, and I've been part of that. I've been kind of faculty, one of the coaches with Lowell and Matthew Derriman. And so we merged the two companies recently. We have, very similar things that we do. And we believe that there's synergy with the three of us working together under one umbrella, one company. So we've got a mastermind group, which is our highest level, where we're working with a group of doctors. We have what's called an academy, which is a lot of content, and just from a price standpoint, a little bit lower. And there's not the masterminding of that, but there's people getting together and learning things from each other. And the key thing in business is you don't want to be a silo. I mean, there's just so many opportunities to learn from other people.
Yeah.
And just really share ideas and things like that. And then we do one-on-one coaching, and we have about 8 or 9 that we can take, and we have that filled now of one-on-one clients who just really want to take a deeper dive into their business and not be in a group setting, or some of them in a group setting and also want the one-on-one as well, because they just want to go to a higher level. So yeah, I think the merger is great. I think it's going to really, more offerings. We have an office manager program. We have an associate program.
Awesome.
We have a number of different things. We just love serving the industry. Many of us, the three of us have been through a lot of these things, and we're still learning. We learn from, the teacher becomes the student in a lot of cases. You learn from other people.
Yeah.
But sharing and just seeing the light bulb go on for practitioners that, might be here and kind of stuck, and then all of a sudden go to here. And realize just a couple of little triggers can make that happen. It's just really rewarding and exciting. And for me, it's kind of a way to give back, even though I get paid to do it. But I just enjoy seeing the light go on for people, and the confidence and just, what they do for themselves, their family, their team, their patients, everybody.
That's awesome. So they can go to fabi.com or Podiatry Success to get that, right?
PodiatrySuccessToday.com, or they can go to fabi.com. Either way. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris.
My pleasure.
Just stopping it here.